Welcome to the 3030 Health Podcast. The following discussion is for education and entertainment. It is not intended to diagnose or treat disease. Please do not apply any of this information without first discussing it with your doctor. Here is your host, Guillermo Ruiz.
Hello everyone, today's guest on the show is David Kekich. He is the CEO at Maximum Life Foundation, a non-for-profit corporation dedicated to reversing human aging and related diseases. Dave first became intrigued with life extension in 1977 after founding the country's largest insurance master general agency. This was where he was widely exposed to the realities of death from aging. He understood human beings will someday be able to enjoy very long health spans by studying aging. Dave was faced with the possibility of being part of the last generation to die from aging-related diseases. His solution was to further research and move it forward by establishing the Maximum Life Foundation. Dave serves as the board member of the American Aging Association, Life Extension's Buyers Club, and Alcor, Life Extension Foundation Patient Care Trust Fund. Thank you for listening to the show. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with your family and friends. And remember to visit my website, 3030strong.com. Hello everyone, I'm here with David Kekich, and it was really fun the way I got in contact with him. The rock star that Joe Polish is took out his cell phone and basically sent him a video message and said, "Hey Dave, this is Guillermo. He's a naturopathic student. You guys should connect, and maybe you should come on his podcast." How are you doing, Dave?
I'm doing great, Guillermo. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for being here. For people that don't know how you started with all your endeavors, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I work primarily. I formed a foundation called the Maximum Life Foundation in 1999, and that was an extension of a long-term, almost lifelong fascination with aging, and the goal of, and the desire, I should say, and the goal of not dying, at least from aging. and a lot of things I've done since then, most of the things I'm doing right now contribute to that goal.
And I know you have like a business background. How did you make that jump from business into this longevity and science studies?
One day my life got turned upside down. I was on top of the world, and one day and next day I was lying in the hospital bed on my back and paralyzed from a spinal cord injury.
So what happened? Like, did you have an accident?
Well, yeah, I guess you can call it an accident. It could be classified as one. I was working out in the gym and was doing seated alternating presses, overhead presses, if you know what those are.
Yeah.
I felt a really sharp pain in the back of my neck, and it was just horrible pain for a day. It was undiagnosed. I laid in the hospital for a day screaming, and I ended up going paralyzed. They never diagnosed it, but it was a slow bleed, a hematoma inside my spinal canal. It's called an epidural hematoma. And what happened was there had no place for the blood to go, and it was like a rupture, and it gradually compressed my spinal cord until I went paralyzed.
Now, at this point, you had a very successful business, and, sometimes we get dwarfed by, the obstacles that we encounter, how did you, manage to continue on, and to pull yourself from your bootstraps and really push yourself and reinvent yourself?
Well, not very well at first. No, I was a basket case after that because I was very active physically, mentally, runner, a distance runner, avid weight trainer. Had a really great girlfriend and lived on the beach, on the Strand in Manhattan Beach, and right on the ocean, and everything was kind of going my way. But the way I really got out of it, I ended up doing a fundraiser for spinal cord injuries for paralysis, raising money for research. And I had it was of all things, a weightlifting contest. I moved back to Pennsylvania. I was in California when this happened, and I moved back to Pennsylvania in my hometown, and I held this, called it the Eastern U.S. Powerlifting Championships. It was a drug-free event, and I was pretty lethargic up to that point, laid around, kind of depressed, and I put together this contest. We had contestants coming in from all over the East Coast, maybe 6 or 7 states, and it rented an arena at the local university, and it was a pretty big success. We got a lot of local media attention and a lot of good press, and raised some money for research. It was a 2-day event, and it went over very well. And I just came to the realization that my brain still works, and I kind of gradually from that point just eased back into business, started working my way back up to where I used to be, and try to recover my the fortune that I lost. I mean, it was a pretty big financial hit when I lost my business. So I guess that really got me into the life. I went into a couple of different businesses, basically raising money for entrepreneurs. But in 1999, I formed a foundation called the Maximum Life Foundation, and that satisfied my lust for a cure for aging. I mean, I really wanted a cure for paralysis, but gosh, before I was hurt, I had a really strong interest in life extension, and I always assumed that technology would take care of aging. And I thought if I lived to be about 100 years old, technology would keep me living for, on and on and on and on. And it wouldn't, it would just be a matter of making it to 100. And I thought, well, with emerging research going on in new medical technologies that keep you alive longer, I thought 100 would be a pretty good target, and I thought I had a reasonably good chance of reaching it. However, I didn't see much progress going on in life extension research and aging research. So in 1999, I formed the foundation, and the foundation's purpose was to be able to contribute to the research, not as a researcher, but contribute some way, shape, or form to being able to reverse the human aging process. And did the foundation with the intent of raising money for research. And I put together a conference, an international conference, with some of the, I guess about a dozen or so of the leading researchers around the world, most in the U.S., but other Israel and the U.K. and some other places. And I moved back to California, and we held our first conference in the year 2000, in June of 2000. And it was very interesting. What happened was, before I came out here, I held a fundraiser for the foundation and raised enough money to bring all these researchers in from around the world, and held a weekend conference. And out of that, we crafted a scientific roadmap on how to cure aging.
I like how you put that. How to cure aging.
Yeah, well, I consider aging to be a disease, and the main reason I consider that to be a disease is it kills you 100% of the time. Something doesn't get you first.
And it's so interesting that someone coming from outside the a science background, with some skin in the game, because obviously you are interested in this aspect of health, but I found two things coming to going through the naturopathic program. That the way that we practice medicine right now, where we just plaster band-aids over existing conditions without removing obstacles to health, is a problem. And secondly, that the brightest minds in research are not very good business people. So it's this perfect storm where you can have the best findings, but if you can't make them applicable to populations, then it gets lost in the mix.
Exactly. And I was lucky enough to have a little bit of a background in both areas, where I was able to integrate some of the things, bringing in some business sense. Actually, when I was doing my raising money for entrepreneurs, I was doing venture capital, private venture capital. I learned a little bit about the venture capital business and what it takes to make a company successful. And you're right about researchers typically not being good business people. Well, for one thing, it's a whole different field. They spend their lives on their particular niche. They, inventors make lousy business people. I mean, most people make lousy business people, and business people make lousy researchers.
But you somehow managed to marry both of them. Now let me ask you, who shows up to your conferences? Who is your audience that comes and attends this anti-aging conferences?
Well, the one we had the first time was a closed conference. It was a brainstorm session, and it was just researchers. It was typically talking about the technologies, the science behind aging, and how we're going to be able to reverse aging by applying those sciences. What was interesting is we had about a dozen different people from about a dozen different disciplines, and some of them knew each other. Hardly any of them did. And there was a lot of cross pollination going on where people were doing research in one area which was synergistic with research that other people were doing in other areas, yet they never heard of each other. They never heard of each other's research. And they got together over that weekend, and kind of magical things happened. I mean, I had one guy come in from a company called Affymetrix, who make these things called gene chips. They're like laboratories on a chip, and they're very, very big now. They were brand new then. And these researchers never heard of those things. And one researcher in particular said that he cut his costs down by about 50 or 60%, and it accelerated his research by about 3 or 4 years just that one weekend.
It's just amazing because you can have like I do a lot of viral and botanical research at the at ASU at the Arizona State University, and the way the Biodesign Institute is set up is that all the benches are basically in one big long room with no connections, with no walls. So if you have a question for another peer, you can just walk to the next bench and ask for advice on maybe something that is completely different. And
Right.
if we could just instigate this type of mind forums where we can contribute with each other, maybe we would see some of these problems disappear. For example, technology. Technology keeps getting cheaper and cheaper. Computers keep getting faster and faster. That's not the case with healthcare. Why do you think this is happening?
Well, there's a bottleneck. First of all, gathering information. In fact, one of the technologies I'm going to work on would probably solve that. When I say working on it, working with a scientist, and that's an artificial intelligence technology. That's able to marry a lot of research, a lot of breakthroughs, a lot of information, publications, and so forth that only the people that wrote them and their direct peers probably ever would read these things. Where when you get a technology as powerful as artificial intelligence, or at least the specific form that we're developing, it would take all that information and it would translate it into modalities, into clinical applications, and take those applications right to the patients. So it would be a way to kind of integrate everything that's going on in research and bring it down to practical terms.
And now, would this be end user, or would you have a practitioner in between?
For the time being, practitioner in between, but eventually end users are taking more and more responsibility for their health. Simply because we're so much more empowered now.
Yeah, the internet has made this world just so accessible.
Yeah. Oh my God, yes, it's amazing.
So what are some specific areas of research in the anti-aging community that are really hot right now? I know a couple of years ago, hypocaloric diets were all the rage.
Yeah, well, you can take those kind of things that people are doing right now, which you apply to your lifestyle factors, your lifestyle habits. And then, of course, the separation is what kind of research is going on, what kind of technologies are going on that are clinically applicable as interventions that the doctors would provide. And one is a big one, of course. We've all read about it and know a lot about it. But back in 2000, hardly anybody did, was stem cell research.
Yeah.
And that may be the biggest thing ever to hit medicine by the time it's all over. There are some other things that'll eclipse that. but right now it's applicable to almost any kind of disease and any kind of condition almost. So
here at the school, we have a pain relief center, and I'm super interested in that because of the opioid epidemics that we have, just ravaging this country, and just the way that just the paradigm shift of, instead of just giving you an oxycodone or an opioid to silence your pain up until the effect goes away, and then you take another one, and then you take another one so you can continue working. We're looking into more of like actually fixing what's wrong. And I recently interviewed Kristen Kamela, who fantastic researcher with US stem cell, and we were talking about like all of the different applications that you can do with stem cells. And this is beyond just repairing an ACL. Can you tell us a little bit about other things that you can use stem cell for?
Oh, sure. Heart repair, repair for retinas. There are some, different forms of blindness right now they're using stem cells to treat
COPD.
virtually everything. You name a disease and there's a stem cell application for it.
And for our listeners, this is not medicine from the future. There are practitioners in the United States that are using these types of therapies.
There are, and I might point out that they're a lot more aggressive in many other countries simply because there's a bottleneck called the FDA right now that has pretty much declared stem cells as drugs.
And now imagine that, your own stem cells, your own cells that you were born with, the FDA is trying to regulate.
Well, they are regulating them as long as they're modified, and they're typically very ineffective unless you modify them somewhat. And modification might be something as simple as amplifying them, just growing more, and they consider that as a modification. So they've really slowed things down. But what's really interesting is there's a guy named O'Neill who may be the new head of the FDA. He's mentioned in the Trump administration right now, and he comes out of the Peter Thiel camp. And Peter Thiel is an immortalist, you might say. He wants to live forever, but very interested in reversing aging, and he's very aggressive in his own personal habits and the therapies that he takes personally. And this O'Neill is heading up one of Thiel's venture capital companies, and he is also very aggressive in being interested in reversing aging, and he's interested in getting rid of the phase 2 and 3 clinical trials. He's interested in bringing things to the public as soon as they're proven safe, and at least at the patient's option, and that would shave $1 billion possibly or more off of some drug applications, and it might, instead of taking 10 or 12 or more years, it might bring these drug approval rates down to just a handful of years. So some of the things that we're looking at right now, the stem cells and things like that, he may streamline. Hopefully he'll get in. And if he does, there's a lot of hope that medicine in this country will be brought into the 21st century. Meanwhile, a lot of people are going offshore for treatment.
Yeah, I know that like Panama has a big clinic, don't they?
Oh, yeah. I know the owner of the clinic. Yeah, he's a very good clinic.
So, okay, so for the listeners, how can they inform themselves and be safe if they want to try one of these treatments? How can is there a database that they can consult, or should they go to their primary physician and ask them? How would you guide someone for some of these treatments?
Well, primary physicians, most are not really conversant with all the different diseases and conditions and research that's going on. I mean, they're overworked. They're getting underpaid anymore because of all the regulations that cost a lot of money to implement. And they just don't have time to keep up with all the research. Some of them do, but they have typically smaller patient loads. The depending on the doctor that you have, and it's tough to figure out what doctor is really good and what doctor is really bad. If you go on Google and you see the doctor's ratings, is typically, well, how long were they keeping you in the waiting room before?
how,
How nice were they to you? How friendly were they?
how fast
Uh,
did they discharge you?
yeah. You want to find out first of all how quickly were you discharged, and what's your readmission rate? So, but the bottom line is, did they cure you or not? Our medical system is broken. That's no secret. Everybody knows that. It's a tough puzzle to unwind. There's no, as far as I know, there may be one out there, but there's no ready source, no database that's going to tell you what stem cell treatments are safe. I mean, don't get me wrong. When I knock the FDA, I'm not saying that we should be reckless. We want to make sure that whatever we're doing is safe and we don't do more harm to us. But when people are dying, when they're terminal, whether it's proven safe or not, they're going to die anyway. And I think it should be up to the patient to determine what they want to have done.
One of the reasons I chose naturopathic medicine is because there's different ways of treating people. We discussed, maybe just you can write a prescription and suppress symptoms, and that person is going to feel fine, but there is something underlying that is eating at them. Or you have this other system that can be done, by moms feeding their kids wholesome food, by acupuncturists that are informed and are going to listen to their patients and give them good care, by naturopaths, you don't have to be a naturopath to remove obstacles to health. But one of the biggest reasons I chose this profession is because I am tired of this hidden economy of insurance companies. And I want to be more transparent when my patients come to see me. I want to make sure that I'm giving them the best care that I can give them for a fair price. The problem, just like scientists are not very good business people, medical students are not very good business people either. So what's some advice that you can give all of the entrepreneurs that are listening in order to set themselves up for success?
Well, ground yourself in the fundamentals, learn marketing, business practices, there are so many good textbooks in colleges that teach you that. But just ground yourself in the basics. And, I say a good place to start with marketing, because everything depends on getting your customers through the door. And once they're through the door, once they come to your door, you want to make sure before they come there, they're comfortable with you as a practitioner. And I would, marketing is marketing. It doesn't matter if you're selling hula hoops or if you're marketing chiropractic services or naturopathic services or traditional medicine, allopathic medicine. It's the message that you put out to the general public that gives them confidence in your abilities. And shame on you if you put out a misrepresenting message. I mean, it's up to each college person, it's up to each student, up to each doctor to be as good as they can possibly be in their field, as proficient as they can possibly be. And I think one thing that most people don't adhere to, or they overlook in their business practices, is getting patient referrals. If somebody's happy with you as a patient, then you should be aggressive in getting them to, spread the word, refer you to their friends, their family, their networks, and what have you.
And it goes beyond that, because at some point there's the limiting returns where you cannot see every single patient out there. So so then you'll be overworked, and now you won't be able to keep up with research, and so there are other ways to get out your message. And I really feel that having mentors and having people to listen to, and who are maybe maybe I'll be very involved in treating chronic pain, but having connections to someone like you that has his ear to the ground when it comes to longevity, that is just so important.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned, that people don't have time to see people one-on-one, especially the bigger and bigger their patient flow becomes. I wrote a book called Smart, Strong, and Sexy at 100 because people used to come to me, and I'm not a doctor, and I'm pretty well grounded in some of the basics. I'm a pretty well informed layperson, but I know a lot more than most people do about longevity, about general health and well-being. It's been an interest of mine all my life. So rather than trying to answer everybody's questions one on one and walk them through this or walk them through that, I wrote a book called Smart, Strong, and Sexy at 100, which I update about once a year. And it basically gives you 7 steps that you can take to be for optimal health and wellness and longevity. And it also talks about all the reasons why we're going to be able to reverse aging in our lifetime. It gives you a rundown of the technologies that are happening right now, the research that's going on, and it gives you the philosophical reason why things are happening so much faster now than they were before. We're growing, like you said, at an accelerating rate. It's geometric. I mean, we're doubling our data every single year. That all the data that we've accumulated since the beginning of time, next year we'll have twice as much. And then it's being able to manage that data, which is the real challenge. And that's where AI comes in. That's why I think AI is so important for not just longevity, but virtually every research, every industry.
So how do you feel about like gamification of health? You know, like wearing your Fitbit or tracking your calories and then having a little reward if you achieve your goals. Do you think that's going to be something that keeps getting potentiated? Because I just recently read a paper, and I'll link it in my show notes, that said that maybe we were a little bit too optimistic.
Well, we're not optimistic as far as the science goes behind that. As far as the tools that are being delivered to the general public, where we're overly optimistic is the adherence of the general public to anything that has to do with prevention. And as you know, as a practitioner, people typically don't come to see a practitioner until something is hurting, until they've been diagnosed. And oftentimes that's too late. So these tools that you mentioned that are emerging hopefully will make it a lot more easy for people to prevent, a lot more fun for them to prevent, have some measurable results where people can see how easier ways to lose weight, for example. But people typically like to eat more than they like to feel good until they feel really bad, and then they come to see you.
And yeah, and it's just mind blowing, that you have all these people that don't even know they're sick, that they can go through life without knowing what hunger really is. Like they have this mental or psychological hunger, that because it's 2 o'clock or because their sugar dropped and now that it's time to eat and now you're doing it mindlessly, versus someone that has was sick, lost some weight, and now hunger is like this drive for thriving, and it feels good to have that ghrelin movement in your in your gut, and having like a little bit of hunger. You're like, you know what, it's time to eat, and now you're enjoying your food, and now you're in a different place when you are actually feeding yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And the science that went behind making food more available and more abundant also denaturized or denatured the food in many cases. So we have more to eat, but it's less healthy for us.
Yeah, it's or it's when they say once you pop you can't stop, they're not lying. They're food engineers that their whole purpose is to create the perfect food. So it bypasses your satiety receptors and it makes you feel happy, and then you can't stop eating it.
Yeah, that's a problem. Some of this junk food tastes so great.
Yeah, and it's so nutritious too. It might not be rich in micronutrients, but it's very rich in calories. So
yeah, that's the problem.
Now, what are some of your hacks, or I don't like calling hacks, but what are some of your some of the things that you do in your day to day to continue getting healthier and healthier?
Well, I mean, most of my life I've been adhering to a really strong workout routine, and I'm very proactive with my health. I work out rigorously and religiously. I do aerobics, as cardio, as well as resistance training, and I have my own special ways of doing it. Typically, interval training, high intensity, short duration compared with what I used to do when I was a lot younger. So that's one. And I fast 1 day a week. My particular diet is paleo, and I have a lot of good reasons for that. I think that anybody over 50 and maybe even over 40 should adhere to a paleo diet for a couple of good reasons. And I address that. In fact, it's so important in my book that I even devoted a whole appendix to it. But basically, it's theorized that, or at least hypothesized, I should say, that you could really stop aging. And when I say stop aging, I don't mean you're going to live forever because you're on paleo, but you can stop the acceleration of aging as you age, and you can pretty much plateau the aging process, the aging rate, at 50 or 60 or 70, depending on when you start this regimen, 40 maybe.
It's so funny because I came to naturopathic medicine through the works of like Rob Wolf, Lauren
Oh yeah,
Cormain,
sure.
Chris Kresser, So
Yeah.
I came into this, right before the wave was crashing, in this paleo movement. And it's so amazing how this movement went from like this little thing, this little, let's eat like our ancestors. And it has boomed into this huge success. It makes me very happy, but with it, it gets, we have a lot of I call them failure foods. So you're like, oh, I can't eat pizza anymore because that's not paleo. So then you make it with almond flour or coconut
Yeah,
flour, and you put
exactly.
a bunch of calories in it, and now, yeah, sure, it's a little bit less inflammatory than a pizza, but it might not be the best idea. Thankfully, when we have free markets and when we have choice, the things that are not effective start becoming less in vogue, and the cream rises to the top.
That's true. I've personally been on doing paleo for about, I guess, almost 7 years now, and I certainly don't miss dairy. Don't get me wrong. I mean, some people think it's Spartan to eat ice cream. I'll eat ice cream once in a while, like maybe a few times a year, but I don't eat any bread, any grains, and I don't really miss them because there are a lot of good substitutes for them.
And having, I my favorite cheat is ice cream, and the way I kind of give it a pass is because it's so high in fat. But I do notice that I break out a little bit when I have some lactose. So I try to stay away from it, but I can have a scoop of vanilla ice cream every once in a while, and that's the difference, because it's now something that is special. Now you don't have to eat the whole pint.
Oh, I know. I can have one little cup. That's what I do. And I love it. I mean, I absolutely love it. I mean, when you eat anything every day, I mean, and some people do eat ice cream every day, you lose the enjoyment of it. It just becomes habit.
Yeah, and now what about, do you do any supplementation? Do you take any botanicals, any adaptogens, anything like that?
I supplement very heavily. I devoted a whole chapter in my book to supplementation.
That's smart, strong, and sexy at 100.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's difficult, to know what the supplementation, is going to give you, because our laws when it comes to regulation of this stuff are not very strong. So you can have very good companies putting out really good quality supplements, and right next to them you can have a really crappy company putting something that is named the same but is not going to have the same quality.
Same quality, the same potency. You're exactly right.
Yeah, and you know, and that can get frustrating, and that's why it's important to always work with a practitioner that has some knowledge in this world of, you know, whether it's anti-aging, pain management, hormones, you know, all of these different things. So let me ask you a question: how long before the first person to live to 150 is born?
Oh, I mean, there are many people alive. I think I have a good shot at 150.
And that's the same response that Kristen Camella gave me. So have you done any stem cell treatments on yourself?
I had one treatment, but that was for a different reason.
So yeah, so this technology is available and out there. How did you come up with the 100 Kekich credo?
Oh gosh, I had, after I got hurt, I made a couple of blunders in business, and it cost me a fortune. And I sat down one day, and oh man, I don't even know when this was. This was probably 25 years ago. I don't know. Actually, I think I know about when it was. It was around 1988, so it was, maybe 26 years ago. I just took some time out, shut myself off from the world, and started writing all the mistakes I made and all the things that I learned that I did not apply to my life, that would have kept me from making those mistakes had I adhered to them. And it grew from there. I just did it for myself. It was something to keep me on the right track. And if you know Gary Halbert, or knew Gary Halbert, or know who he was, he got a hold of my credos one time and wanted to publish them in his newsletter. And he had a very wide-reaching newsletter, and that's where Joe Polish finally.
Yeah, one of the first things Joe did was, when he met me, he handed me those 100 credos, and I have them right here, on my desk, and they're just so motivational.
Oh, thank you very much.
And maybe I can put a link to your website, or somewhere where people can download them, and maybe just like read them once, and then if they think they're amazing, they can throw them away or whatever, but at least read them.
Yeah, they evolved. I mean, over the years, they're not what they started off to be. They're a lot more inclusive now. But I've been promising Joe Polish. By the way, we talked about marketing and how important marketing is for any business. And Joe has a free blog called ilovemarketing.com that I suggest everybody who has any kind of interest in marketing, or business, I should say, and marketing in particular, because that's a foundation of every business, is listen to these things. I mean, it's a PhD in marketing. If you want to earn a PhD in marketing and not pay a dime for it, just listen to every one of those podcasts. I don't know how many there are. Do you have any idea?
It's a ton, but they're gold.
Oh, they're solid gold. But you got me off on a track. What was the question?
I don't even know, but let's talk about marketing. Oh yeah, how do you come up with the credos, and how they evolve, and how you promised Joe?
I was talking about Gary, how he Joe Polish saw, we were both subscribers to the Gary Halbert newsletter, and Joe connected with me probably well over 20 years ago, and we've been, oh gosh, really good friends ever since.
And now you're developing this into a book?
I am. The book is written, and it's called Master Life.
Beautiful. We're recording this early. I'll make sure that this gets out to all the listeners, and try to get as many people informed and really changing their lives.
Great. Thank you very much.
So how can people reach you?
You can reach me at my maxlife.org. maxlife.org, O-R-G. And that's my Maximum Life Foundation website. And then I have a website called maxlifesolution.com. And we put together I have three companies that I work, they're not all mine, but I work in all of them. I'm going to be spending less time on the maxlifesolution.com, but Max Life Solution. Most of my time right now is spent with a company called BioViva, and that's a gene therapy company. And we're getting pretty close to being able to treat patients offshore with a medical tourism model. And some of the things that we're going to be attacking with gene therapy are aging itself, Alzheimer's disease, sarcopenia, which is muscle wasting, and arterial plaque atherosclerosis. So these are some of the interesting things that we're working on right now, working on opening a couple of clinics around the world.
So with the anti-aging, what are you targeting? Like telomeres?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
It's the HTERT gene.
Uh-huh.
And we're now playing around with different delivery systems, different viral vectors, or different vectors, I should say.
Wow.
And delivering them more efficiently and less expensively. It's very, very expensive, right? Gene therapies right now are extremely expensive because of these viral vectors. They just take 3 or 4 months to build, and it's an economic mess. Only the wealthiest or the wealthy can really realistically afford full body treatments. But we'll get those down, and we want to get them down. Our goal is to get them down to the point where everybody can afford these treatments, and sooner the better.
And with technology like CRISPR and all of these technologies that are coming, that where you can handle single genes, it's just going to get easier.
Much easier, and CRISPR's part of our mix, and we'll be doing stem cell work in our clinics as well.
Wow. Now, for Alzheimer's, what are you guys doing?
Same thing, the same gene, HTERT. Yeah, and it would be a much smaller dose, and it would be, instead of doing an IV where it would go into where you would have a systemic dispersion of the gene, systemic being your whole body. Yeah, we would target the brain.
Now, is this a substitute for good sleep and a good diet and
nothing is substitute for that
and good supplementation and having a good practitioner and all of these beautiful things that we can do before we get to that point?
No, you really maybe someday in the future, in the far future, you can do anything you want to do and get away with it all. But right now, even with the gene therapies and stem cell treatments, you're just going to undo everything if you have idiotic lifestyles.
Well, well put. Well, thank you so much, Dave. I really enjoy your conversation. Thank you for coming into this show, and good luck with all of your projects. And, we got to keep in touch because this is just super amazing.
Guillermo, thank you very much. Best of luck with your finals and your podcast and everything that you're doing.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.